Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Joining us for the segment, we have Matt Peron, director of research at Janus, Henderson Investors, to discuss findings from their latest global dividend index and outlook for 2022. Matt, it's great to see you. Welcome to Trade Talks.
Great. Thanks for having me, Jill.
All right, you got it. And let's talk about dividend performance in the third quarter. How did they do?
Dividends were pretty terrific. There is no other way to say it. Globally, as well as in the U.S. The U.S. hit a record high for a third quarter, and globally we got pretty close, up 22% globally year on year in the third quarter. So a very strong third quarter for dividends.
Why do you think we saw an increase in both domestic and international dividends?
It's a different story in the U.S. and outside the U.S. The U.S. really didn't cut their dividends very much last year during the pandemic. And so as a result, they used the buyback lever. They cut their buybacks more than they did dividends. So as a result, dividends in the U.S. stayed pretty resilient. That was not the case outside the U.S. Outside the U.S., there were very drastic cuts to dividends. So this year, you're seeing a return to those dividends. So as a result, outside the U.S., you're seeing strong dividend recovery. And that's really the story, just a catch up by the non-U.S. Dividend payers.
Right. Well, I guess the question is, do you expect global dividends to surpass the pre-pandemic peak either by the end of this year, early next year?
Yeah, we do, Jill. I think 2022 is going to be a very strong year, continued strength in dividends. And as you say, I think there's a good chance our base case forecast is that 2021 will actually surpass or set a new record for global dividends. So we're optimistic for this final quarter in 2021, and for 2022, that as well, where we should see continued growth in dividends.
If we drill down a little bit further, were there specific sectors or areas that investors went to when looking for dividends? I mean, everyone's looking for yield somewhere, right? And you're not getting it in fixed income. So was there any specific area that you noticed?
Well, the biggest strength in terms of dividend recovery this year was in the banking sector. Somewhat in the mining sector, but in the banking sector, many of them had to reduce dividends in 2020 or cut them altogether in 2020 as a result of regulatory action to maintain capital ratios, et cetera. They came roaring back in 2021 as the banks really, their strong balance sheet, they were able to weather the pandemic quite well, and so they restored their dividends. And that was really the story in terms of dividends coming back. So that's a sector I would look to in terms of dividends. And growth.
All right, Matt, we appreciate the insight. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq.
Thanks for having me.